Hang on, wait, stop there. When you have a Y at the end of a word, you won't stop and say mordni and then angrim, because that Y kind of mixes with the vowel that follows it. So you'll just kind of blend it. So it'll be mordnyangrim. Yeah.
Rityo kritveva murdangrim.
Rityo kritveva mordnyangrim.
Arura hare padam.
Arura hare padam. Yayotana paraputro. Munina nitayarbakaha. Mrityo kritvaiva mordnyangrim. Arura hare padam. Munina gitayarbakaha. Mrityo kritvaiva mordnyangrim. Aruroha hare padam.
Yayotana paraputro.
Yayotana paraputro.
Munina gitayarbakaha.
Munina gitayarbakaha.
Mrityo kritvaiva mordnyangrim.
Mrityo kritvaiva mordnyangrim.
Aruroha hare padam.
Aruroha hare padam. Anyone else? All right. Yaya.
Yaya.
By which?
I wish.
Okay. Uttanapadaha. Of King Uttanapad. Putraha. Son. Munina. By the sage. Gitaya. Being sung. Arbhakaha. A child. Mrityoho. Of death. Kritva. Placing. Eva. Certainly. Mordni. On the head. Angrim. Feet. Aroha. Ascended. Harehe. Of the personality of Godhead. Padam. To the abode. Translation. By hearing these topics from the sage Narada, the son of King Uttanapad, Dhruva, was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead. And he ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of death. Purport. By his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. While quitting his body, Maharaj Dhruva, the son of King Uttanapad, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others, who received him in the kingdom of God. He left this world at an early age as a young boy, although he had attained the throne of his father and had several children of his own. Because he was due to quit this world, death was waiting for him. He did not care for death, however, and even with his present body, he boarded a spiritual airplane and went directly to the planet of Vishnu, because of his association with the great sage Narada, who had spoken to him the narration of the pastimes of the Lord. Again, the shloka is Yotana Paraputro Munina Gitayarbakaha Mrityo Kritvaiva Mordnyangrim Aruroha Hare Padam. By hearing these topics from the sage Narada, the son of King Uttanapad was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead, and he ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of death. Om Jnanitimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Rasa got that camera for a present. I'm ignorant of such matters, but I can tell you this. When we have guests now, we can tape them.
Really intimidating.
And show people what we're doing here. Isn't that nice? And what are we necessarily doing here? That's the question. We've come to hear. We hear in the 7th canto, when we're discussing another great devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. We hear about the 9 processes of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Padasevam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanavedanam. That these are the 9 processes of devotional service. These 9 processes they are necessary for spiritual perfection. One has to take up these 9 processes. If one's sincere, one says, I want to make spiritual advancement, then one has to begin these 9 processes. And the first process is Shravana, is hearing. Hearing sets the whole thing in motion. Hearing sets anything in motion. Anything. You ask somebody famous, why did you take up this path, or why did you do what you do? And they always have the same reason. I heard something inspired me. Maybe they read it, but in either case, something entered their mind, some thought. And then that thought occurred to them that I can do something great. I can become more than what I am at the present. That's a powerful thing. That simply, when you think about it, some sound coming out of someone's mouth, some ink on a page, can phenomenally change the world. That's Prabhupada was very clear about distributing his books. He said, look at the Communist Party. He said, their literature is rubbish. He said, but because he said they've disseminated it so widely, they've won over such a big audience. Now, you look around and you see so many people now interested in yoga, interested in vegetarianism. I think it's now like even the majority of Americans believe in reincarnation. Where do you think they got all those ideas from? How many books did we distribute? And before those books were distributed, the 70s, 80s, 60s, these were not. There were some people who ascribed to these thoughts, but what, mainstream? No. So that's from Prabhupada's books being distributed, setting in a cultural revolution. And isn't that what he said he was going to do? First canto? He said, I want to start a revolution for the spiritual revitalization of humanity. He said that very clearly. And not he said it, the Bhagavatam says it. The Bhagavatam says this is its goal, to create a spiritual revolution for the spiritual revitalization of humanity. We want to be part of that, but not just on an external level. We want to be part of that on an internal level. We were discussing this yesterday, right, Vitaly? Favorite quote of mine by Alexander Pope, who was an English poet. Remember how Vidura, you were asking me about Pope before. He was a poet during the Restoration period. And he's the 3rd most quoted author of all time. And you know many of his sayings. I was telling him one, for example, to err is human, to forgive is divine. This is Pope. So he's many of these types of short sayings. And one of them is, knowledge is very dangerous, he says. So drink deeply of it, because that is how you'll taste of the Parisian spring. In other words, it's not just enough to hear, or to let something enter our head. But we have to really think deeply about it for it to affect us. So we can talk about Shravana hearing, but we have to understand there's two ways of hearing. There's a difference between hearing and listening. There's a difference between passively something entering our ear and actively letting it enter and then contemplating what we think, or contemplating what we're hearing and then thinking about it. This is what we should do when we hear. Not just, well, I heard a class. Okay, you heard a class, what'd you think about it? What points when you heard the class did you take note and think, okay, I should try to put that into practice? Because we're talking here about Dhruva Maharaj and his hearing practice. Because he heard, he attained liberation, because he heard from his guru. And when you think about it, when did Dhruva, how much association really with his guru did he have? Yeah, because when did he hear from him? Do you remember?
After he sat in the... well, from his mother, from Nara.
Yeah, but when he went to the forest, right? So he gets to the forest. His mother is his Varma production guru.
Okay.
She tells him, he says, I want a kingdom, and I want a kingdom greater than my father. She says, well, or a kingdom greater than my grandfather even. It was Brahma. How are you going to beat that? Well, it's a little loud. So he says, his mother says, you got to go to the forest. You got to. That's how I heard that Vishnu can be found in the forest amongst the sages. So he goes there, and he does austerity. And then Narada comes.
He sat in universal words.
Yes. So his austerity is so intense that it's disrupted the order of the universe. Just think of it, for example, for a minute. The name Dhruva. What does the word Dhruva mean? Determined. What did you say, Trisha?
No.
Determined. Also means fixed. That's why we call Dhruva Loka, it's fixed. It's the only star that's fixed. Everything moves around it. Dhruva Loka is the pole star. Did you know that, Paul? Look at that. Yeah. So anytime you see it, you can think, there's Dhruva there, Dhruva Loka. But he's fixed, just like his determination. So fixed. Not rigid. Fixed. Determined. I want something, and I'm going to get it. That's a Kshatriya. A Brahmin will back down. A Brahmin will say, maybe Krishna doesn't want this. Shudra may be kind of lazy. It's too much work. Vaishya wants to know if there's money involved.
How much is it?
Yeah. What's in it for me?
How much donation will be?
But a Kshatriya,
I said there's donation.
the Kshatriya thinks, I'm going to get this just because I'm going to do it. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get that thing. And that was Dhruva's determination. And because he was so determined, he got guru. We want to know, how am I going to get guru so I can hear from guru, right? Because what is the point of getting a guru? It's to hear. What is the whole basis of the guru-disciple relationship? It is hearing. Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidi pradapatena priprashnena seva upadekshati te jnanam jnanastattva darshanaha. Krishna says, Arjuna, you're going to see the truth. Tattva darshanaha. By seeing somebody who has seen the truth. And you're going to see that by three things. Tadvidi pradapatena, approaching them. Priprashnena, asking questions. Sevya, serving them. This is the 3 ways to serve the Guru. But ultimately, the middle one, that's really where the most of the interaction between the Guru and disciples is taking place. That the Guru's there, and I'm hearing from him. Maybe I'm not even having questions. Maybe just listening to the things that he's talking about. Because by hearing from him, what the Guru's doing is he's inciting a desire for Krishna within our heart. Flaming it up. Just like we were talking a minute ago. Anyone who's great, they hear something, and then they think, well, let me do something about that thing that I've heard, because it's inspired me so much. So this is how you get through it. When our sadhana is so strong, so fixed, then Krishna sends Guru. And then from the Guru we hear. But when Narada Muni came, we don't hear in the story of there being like long, protracted association. He kind of comes, right, speaks to him a little bit, well, first he tests him, right? He comes and he says, what do you want? Well, I want this kingdom greater than my father. You're just a boy. How can you do this austerity? You should go back. Srila Govinda Maharaj explains the Guru has 2 potencies. He has a mercy potency, and he has a cheating potency. Why would the Guru cheat us, Rohit?
I was thinking why.
Yeah. Guru cheats us? Yes, he does. Because we're not ready. So he hides. Right? We hear that Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Avajanati Mamuha Manusham Tanamashratam Prambhavam Ajanato. No, wrong shloka. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Maya Samavrita Udoyam Navajanati Lokamama Jamabhyam. He says, I am covered by my internal potency. Which potency is the Guru acting under? Internal. So it's times he may be part of that hiding. Why? Because we're not ready for something, and it may hurt our faith. So he takes a part preventing that. And holding it back to increase our eagerness. Wants to increase our eagerness. Just like I may say, well, here, Siddhahari, here's half a can of burners. And then you say, that was so good, can I get more? Yes, but I'm going to need you to go out and cut my grass for me. Of course you'll do it. There's another half a can of burners waiting there for your hard work. But why just a little bit? To increase your determination. And to increase your taste. So the Guru does this. And he does this through the process of hearing, Shravana. And look at the effect of the process of hearing. Look what happened. That because Narada Muni spoke to Dhruva Maharaj and Dhruva heard, he ascended to the abode of the Lord. Now think a minute about his hearing, Dhruva Maharaj's hearing. What type of hearing was it? Does everybody who hears get this same effect? Let's ask that question. No. Halguni, our Guru here, has asserted no, that is not going to happen for everybody. Why is it not going to happen for everybody, Vitaly? Why is not everyone going to just hear and get liberation?
Because everybody's at different levels on the spiritual path and in different guna, and they just might not.
Okay, so
because they're conditioned in a different way. They have to.
But the hearing process is so powerful that no matter what level all of them are at, they should be able to hear and become purified. So that really should be of no consequence what level they're at. Just like, for example, I make a big stain, but it doesn't matter. When I bring Clorox bleach and pour it on, regardless, it's cleaned. So it shouldn't matter the intensity of infection from the 3 modes, because hearing is so powerful. So that answer is insufficient. It was a good try. So no, that won't work. The holy name, Krishna's form, the hearing, these are also powerful. And Prabhupada calls, what's the word he used? Prophylactic. They should be able to purify anything. So, no. So why isn't everyone getting the same result? Hanuman.
Because some people don't want to listen.
That's a good point. Sincerity. It's not just enough to hear. We have to act upon what we hear. And it's not just enough to act. We have to act consciously. Prabhupada called his society International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Which means when we hear and when we do things, no matter what we're doing or our approach, our whole mindset should be, I'm doing this because I want to please Krishna. And when we hear, we have to hear it attentively and submissively. You can hear, but you may not be submissive. You may hear something and the whole time be fighting against what you're hearing in your mind. Oh yes, it says this, but I can't do this, and this is only meant for younger people that don't have a whole 8 kids, and this doesn't apply to me, or maybe one day I'll get. No, that's not submissive hearing. Submissive hearing is we hear the message from the sadhus and we think, I need to take this up with all sincerity and do my best to surrender to Krishna. Then it acts. Wrong. Now, if we don't understand this, it's only because we're not humble. Only reason. We will hear it, we'll see people make advancement and we'll become angry. Or we won't make advancement, we become angry. And we'll think, this process doesn't work. I'll say, this process doesn't work. I'm not making any advancement. Then I've been cheated. I've spent and wasted all this time doing all these rituals and all these things. But I've seen no advancement come from it. So the process is wrong. But humility, if we're humble, we look and say, did I do anything wrong? And how do we know that? How many checklists of things do we have? That we should do this, this, and this. We can go through those things. The first place to look is we have a checklist we say every morning. What does that mean?
10 offenses.
10 offenses.
Yeah.
That's the first place we should start. Am I chanting the holy name of the Lord, avoiding the 10 offenses? If I'm not, how can I expect the power of the holy name to take effect when I am sabotaging its effect by holding it back? Once, Damodar Maharaj was giving class, and he was recounting one sadhu and grudge he had heard. And he had asked, I think he had asked the sadhu, he said, at the end of Nectar of Instruction, it says, Krishna Syochai Pranaya Vasati Preya Sibyo Pirada Kundam Shasya Munibir Abitastadrigeva Virhai Yat Preshtaryap Yawa Masuvabam Kim Punar Bhakti Bhajam Tat Premiram Sakrita Pisarasnatura Vishkaroti. That if one bathes, Snanam Avishkaroti, if one bathes with an erotic one, Sadrisham, at once, immediately, one gets love of God. And so he asked, but I've bathed in Radhakund, why did I not get love of God? And the sadhu said, You're looking at the last shloka. Did you look at the first shloka of Nectar of Instruction that says Vacho Vegam Manasakro Devegam? First you have to control the urges, the tongue, mind, belly, genitals. Did you do that? If you didn't do number 1, don't get to number 11 and think, oh, it's not working. This is a process. It's not a process we should get disheartened, but if we're sincere, we have to ask ourselves, why is it not working? And we have to have self-examination. Otherwise, we're going to go for everything, but it's empty. It's just some show. It's like in Hamlet. So Claudius, Hamlet's uncle, poisons his father. You know the story, of course, right? Most of you. You know Hamlet? Oh, we're going to spend one day together. Many spiritual truths are there. So here, I'll tell the story for you, for your benefit. So there is a young prince of Denmark. His name is Hamlet. And his father is killed, has been killed by his uncle, because his uncle wanted to marry his mom. Yeah, it's very scandalous, but it's life. Like, you know, we read Bhagavatam, how many scandalous things are done in Bhagavatam. It's the material world. So this Claudio, he knows what he did was wrong. It's hard, even for someone who is wicked, to not have a guilty conscience, because it eats on you. One time, was it Dennis Miller, the comedian, in a conservative talk show, said, your conscience is God's way of telling you you messed up. So Claudius is bowing down after the play has been shown that reveals that he killed, or basically what it shows is that Hamlet knows that he has done this abominable crime. So he's bowing down there, and Hamlet comes by, and Hamlet's ready to kill him. But he says, if I kill him, he's going to go to heaven, because right now he's praying. So if he's praying, his soul's going to be cleansed. But what he can't hear is Claudius is sitting there saying, I would like to pray, but my words can't fly up to heaven, because in here there's nothing. Because I feel, in one sense, I feel bad for what I've done. But in another sense, I don't want to give up the things I've gained. So where's the sincerity, he says. If I was sincere, I'd say, here, Hamlet, here's the throne, you can take this. Here's the cape. You be king, I'll do something for penance or atonement for the crime I committed. But there's no sincerity. He does not feel bad. If he felt bad, he would get off the throne. What about us? Are we sitting there like Claudius saying, you know, oh, I want to make advancement, I want to do this, but all the while not doing something? Now, I'm not saying this means necessarily we're pushing us, we're doing something evil, you know, or something really bad. I'm not saying that, it has to be on the level of, well, you know, I know I should be a vegetarian, but I'm not doing it. It could be something real subtle or light. It could be something where, you know, I'm not focusing enough when I chant my japa. Or when I'm paying my obeisances, I think, you know, I just pay, but I don't have time to go and, I know I should really say the mantras clear and think about them, but I don't got time for that. I got stuff I'm going on. It's these little things, because attention to detail to even little things is how you show Krishna that you love him. You think about this. Those of you who are married or been married, they know, you guys know this. Right? Your wife will do little things for you. Right? You'll open up your bag, go to work, and there's a little card there that says, I love you. That's just a little thing. It took a little piece of paper and some ink. How much did that change your day? What about when you do little things for Krishna? And when you do those little things, what is the effect? How does that change? Now let's go back to the process of hearing. When we do these things, how does that affect the hearing process? How much more do we get from hearing when we have a whole culture, a whole way we're doing things? Then Krishna reciprocates more. So we were talking about active hearing, but it's not just contemplating what we're hearing. It's living our life in such a way that when the hearing takes place, it has a greater effect upon us. I'll give you, if you want an experiment, you can try this. Go offend a devotee and then try to read Bhagavatam after and see how effective it is. Do you want to try this experiment, Roman? No. You don't like offending devotees?
No, means on the course of action, you don't know. Offending, don't want to try.
Yeah, good point. Unfortunately, it happens enough without us even trying. Yeah, no. But things like this, you see the effect that when we don't do the right things, how Krishna doesn't respond. Whereas when we do the right things, when we're sincere, you'll see how Krishna responds. How many of you sitting in this room have had this particular, you don't have to answer, but think to yourself, something you're very determined, want to do something for Krishna, you come in here, bow down, pray to Radha Kunja Bihari, and you walk out the room, and within minutes, some service is given. I think we've all had that effect here. And then you realize who's in charge of this place, how powerful Radha Kunja Bihari are. We have this opportunity to make great spiritual advancement simply by hearing. Even if we can't do anything else, that Shravana, look at the 9 processes. What is the last process in that list? Atmanivedana. Total surrender. Surrender of oneself. That is where Shravana will lead to. See, if you really think about it, that process, these are 9 processes, but they also kind of follow a succession. Well, not kind of, but they do, don't they? First you hear, and then what's the result of hearing? You talk about it. Right? How many, all over the internet, restaurant reviews or whatever, product reviews, why are they there? Because someone wants to talk after they heard about something. So I heard from my friend, and they told me to go and try this product, and I did, and it's so great, so you should do. It's a succession. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam. What's the result of chanting? You start thinking about it. I remember we were in Miami. Remember this? And we'd been chanting like all day. Don't you love those days? Like it's just all day chanting, like won't stop. And we were sitting there in the room at night. There's a lot of crickets because the Miami Temple's got this beautiful garden. And I said, we were talking about how we would sit there and just hearing the crickets, it sounded like kartals after hearing kirtan all day. And that's Vishnu Smarnam. The kirtan has stopped, but now we're still thinking about it. This is the magical process, so we have to do our best to constantly keep ourselves in the process of hearing. That what Dhruva Maharaj attained many, many years ago, yugas ago, that is still available to us. It has not gone away. In fact, it has become more easy. Dhruva Maharaj had to go to a forest to get this. We don't have to do any of that. All you got to do is go to a temple, grab a devotee or two, and say, you get Mridanga, you get kartals, and let's chant. Let's pick up Bhagavad Gita and read. This is available to us. But we have to remember to be sincere. And if we find it's not working, pull those same devotees aside and say, hey, the process is not working. Let's talk about this. And let's get to the heart of the matter. Is that okay? All right. Now the fun part. Questions, challenges, comments.
There was an extra point about the attachment to details. attention to detail brings forth the reciprocation with Krishna that you were speaking of. It's such a great point.
Yeah, we know that because we can all see how we feel when someone pays close attention to us.
Right?
Imagine you go to a hotel and you're staying there for like a week or something, and you come in the room and find that something is a certain way, like you've asked for something, and then you come down and maybe the attendant there says, "Oh, Mr. Green, did you notice we did this and this with you?" Why did you do that? That's affection. It's attention, and you feel special. Wow, they thought enough of me to do this for me. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. At Oakland University, there's a secretary in the English department. If anyone wants to learn a mood of service, you go find this lady. Her name's Shawn. I'll tell you this. I recommend her that highly as a guru. So I come up one day. I had to get this form filled out. And she comes, and the form is right there waiting. It's got a little sticky note. My name is written on it. And I said, you remembered me? Oh, yes, and I remembered that, and she says some kind of offhand, I remember this so that you would like it like this. I felt like $1 million. Now, how does Krishna feel when you, for example, set his plate up and you say, you know what? This shouldn't be like this because it's too hot, and then he'd have to reach and touch it. So I have to move this bowl closer. And the colder stuff that he's going to eat later, let me put that at the end. It's little stuff like that. And as Jusha Prabhu said, because then you think of the antithesis, the opposite of that, which is just, let me just throw everything out and think, how would you feel? It's those little things. And someone may say, well, that's a lot of work. Krishna consciousness is a lot of work for one type of person, a sadhaka, who has no ruchi. Later on, as you go and you start doing this, and naturally your love for Krishna grows, you don't have to work so hard. You start to do it naturally. Like when it's like when a young man first marries a young woman. You're going to have to work very hard, right? Oh yeah, she likes like this, and I have to give her this. Later on, you don't have to think that hard. Oh, I know her. I know naturally what she likes. But at the beginning, we don't know. Because the love is not there. You start a relationship, people have this idea. I get in a relationship because I love someone. What kind of love? That's infatuation. Real love develops over time. So people start, they have some infatuation. Oh, it's so beautiful here, Krishna's so beautiful, devotees are nice. Where's the real love? How much really do they know somebody? That develops. That comes from maturity. Thank you, Jusha. Any other questions? Comments? Yes, Kirida.
So this brings me around, what you're talking about brings us around to something that comes up from time to time, which is the apparent dichotomy between, oh, it's just the bhakti that counts, it's just how much you love Krishna, versus following all the rules and all the little rituals day to day. Where one devotee might say, oh, you don't have your tilak on, you should have your tilak on. And then the other devotee would say, oh, it's just about loving Krishna. You see, and so in that case, obviously, you'd say, well, if you love Krishna so much, then why is it a problem to put on tilak for him? Yeah. But could you talk a little bit about where the line is drawn in that, or?
Many great authorities have tried to. Prabhu, what is wrong with you?
He feels really sick.
It's a problem. Many great authorities have talked about how to set the mark at the right level, and they even disagree about it. So I will just give. One time they were asking Srila Prabhupada, he started introducing a few other rules. He said something to that effect. And Srila Prabhupada, they said, well, can you tell us all the rules? And Srila Prabhupada said, if I told you all the rules, you would faint. So there's a lot out there. And generally, I think, grab him. Thank you, David. He went for the book in his grandson one, so he's not giving up so easily. Let's look at Srila Prabhupada's example, how he started ISKCON. Because a lot of times these rules, what they're focused on is nivritti marg, what you don't do. Right? We were talking about this the other day, right? We learned the shloka, pravrittim cha, nivrittim cha. So pravritti is what you should do, nivritti is what you don't do. Prabhupada started ISKCON, he started it in New York City, Lower East Side, Manhattan. The first initiates, first people that got initiated, Daimai, they did not even know the 4 rules and regulations. You know that. You just initiate them. And then after he said, oh, by the way, there's these 4 rules you should follow. So what was his main emphasis? It was the pravritti, the chanting. You chant, you take prasad, and you hear. Chant, take prasad here. Chant, take prasad here. Naturally, the attraction would come. And then as the attraction would come, the bad habits would, a lot of them would go away naturally. And you would hone your practice by trying to employ more rules and regulations. That's how Srila Prabhupada did it. Now, for us sadhakas, who have been doing this for some time, this is, so for the new people, I think it's very clear the type of approach that should be taken when introducing Krishna consciousness to others. And this is not just even in the West. In the East, in India, it's also the same thing. You have people that you may think they know stuff, but they may not know anything either. So it doesn't matter where you are. But what about, devotees? You've been initiated 10 years and then you're trying to not do things. Well, yeah, certain things, it is about the love, but if you do love Krishna, and there are certain rules, wouldn't you follow them? I mean, what's that shloka? Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yagye pratishtatam. Fruit of activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are born from the Supreme Personality of God. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. This is 3:33? 3:15, thank you. So think about the logic of that shloka. There's rules. Those rules come from the Vedas. The Vedas come from God. So the rules are not different than God. So someone could say, well, I don't need to follow the rules. But if the rules are not different than God and those please Him, why would you avoid them? Why the not apathy, but it's like apathy for these rules. But
then on the other extreme, he was so worried about so many rules. You have to sprinkle 3 drops of water here before you can sit, and you have to do this. Then it becomes where your mind is more concentrated on rules than. Yeah,
it should not get into ritualism either. Yeah. That's why we have to put a focus on what is the most important. And Prabhupada did this right away. His focus was the most important thing is chanting, serving devotees. And even to that, he would break certain rules. I'll give you a very controversial example of Prabhupada breaking a rule. One time, he was in India, and I forgot where they were doing some program, and the mic wouldn't stay on the stand. You know this story? Oh, you're going to love this. So you know what Prabhupada does? He points to the devotee. He says, take off your Brahmin thread and give it to me. You don't take off your Brahmin thread for anything, any reason. Devotee, it's like, Prabhupada, give me your Brahmin thread. Takes off, Prabhupada takes his Brahmin thread and ties the mic to the stand. You go tell some smarter Brahmin, somebody that is overly concerned with the implementation of Vedic rules and rituals, that Srila Prabhupada took a Brahmin thread off of a devotee, tied him like to a stand. They would just completely discount Srila Prabhupada and throw him out. Why not? Why did Srila Prabhupada do it? Now, should we necessarily do that? I'm not saying that. But I think Prabhupada showed us many times by also example, we have to be practical. Yes. But I think what we also have to do is we need to check ourselves. Am I doing this because I'm being lazy or because I really see the validity in what I'm doing? And you're going to have disagreements amongst devotees. And to some degree, we also have to trust people. But we also have to be afraid to not count somebody out or not call somebody out when they do something. Like, why didn't you do this? Oh, because such and such. And then you could say, Prabhu, all glories to you, but that's a bunch of crap. You got to have a better excuse than that. So it's a difficult thing that we have to be conscious of, and sometimes we should pray to Krishna, please give me intelligence so that I can know, how I should adopt things based on the situation at hand, because it is tricky. Does that help? Is that good? Dear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Jushu.
We do this here, you drop into instruction, and then there's the sixth, Niyamagrahasman, where you're following
Yes.
rules, but if you don't understand the reason for the rule, it becomes
That's a good point. So what Jushu Prabhu was saying is, instead of just being concerned with the rules, we should sometimes think, what is the behind the rule? Why is that rule there? And that's important, because if you are studying these things, we should try to know, why is this done? For example, nectar, you were talking about this, nectar devotion says you should not wear red or blue in front of the deities, right? Who here, beside my wife, knows the reason for this? That's some pretty darn good speculation, but wrong. My wife's going to tell you the story.
I'm not sure it's just as much speculation as anything else. Just some devotees have recently come up with this, and I'm pretty sure that it's Dear Krishna who, brought it to the devotees' attention. That at the time when
Sanat Goswami wrote, or Rupa Goswami wrote Nectar of Devotion.
At the time when Nectar of Devotion was written, there were some certain groups who always wore blue but always wore red, dhotis, the men. And it was like it was a sign of that group. And so we didn't want to be associated with them or confused with them. I mean, a lot of the things, like the size of our sikas and other things, it's because of group identity. So it's possible that the blue and red, and it didn't apply to women at the time. This is whatever text he came up with. So it's interesting to know.
Yeah.
So now people keep asking why, and Prabhupada said because it's blue and red, which is a good enough reason.
He said because someone asked him, why can't we wear blue and red in front of the deities? And Prabhupada said because it's blue and red. He didn't give an explanation. But the thing is, like with that situation, who knows? Was Prabhupada in the middle of doing something and he was annoyed that someone was bugging him, and it was like, I don't want to talk about it. It's hard because we also hear some of these stories, trying to get into the heart of why did Prabhupada do or say what he did at a particular time is also difficult to understand and has to be thought about. But yeah, if we can, we should try to understand certain rules and regulations, because there's going to be times when we may have to adjust things. Especially if we want to become a preacher. If we want to just sit in the temple and be overly absorbed with every little detail, that's one thing. But if we do that, we're never going to get out of this building. And if we don't get out of this building, we're not getting more people into it. That's the fact. Dave Miles.
There's the pastime of Lord Chaitanya coming to the South India temple and seeing the Brahman, or the man crying in the temple room reading Bhagavad Gita, although he's reading it upside down.
Yeah.
So it would seem that the intention is the focal point of Krishna's consideration, and that for some of us, a lack of attention is an indication, or a lack of doing certain things is an indication of a lack of attention, which is a lack of devotion, as you pointed out earlier.
That's a good point. And when you were saying that, the other thing I just thought of as you were mentioning that was in regards to him, going back to what my wife said, someone can say, well, I don't have to follow rules because I have bhakti. It's pretty presumptuous, right? I have bhakti. If you have bhakti, then wouldn't you want to follow rules, or wouldn't you want to follow things? I have bhakti, so I'm not attentive. I love you, Dave Lamadova, but when you come to my house, I don't even bother to ask you if you want a glass of water. It doesn't jive.
And sometimes it's the Hajja tendency mixed in. When my husband was trying to change the deity standards in one temple, years ago, the older pujaris had a relatively low standard in that particular temple compared to other temples for years. So they were resistant to adding this and adding that and making things proper. And their whole kind of mood was here in this temple we have an intimate relationship with the deity, and we like it that way, and it's really, we don't want all this smarta Brahman stuff. We're really it's really bhakti, But, so there's a danger of it falling into this Sahajja ideal. Devotees will joke around oh, that naughty Krishna, he made me lose my keys, or, where you start getting...
We shouldn't presume that we're so important that Krishna is making us lose keys to have a laugh.
Right.
we should think that I am so fallen, I'm lucky if Krishna even looks at me.
Right.
That's why so much of it comes down to humility. If we don't have the requisite humility, we're going to go through situations and we're not, instead of actually tasting the real thing, we're going to be putting on a show trying to convince ourselves that we're tasting something, which in fact we are not. And then we're cheating ourselves, right? It's like if a woman walks around and she's always saying, I can't date anyone, or I'm not interested in him because I have a boyfriend or something. So I'm not going to. But in fact, she does not have this boyfriend. How is she ever get married when she's telling everyone she has something? It's not going to happen. She's cheating everyone. So in the same way, if we're walking around saying, well, I have Krishna, how are you going to have him? You're putting all this effort into putting on a front where you can't even experience what in fact is out there if you would say that you don't have it. And this is why we talk about Shad Goswami Ashtaka. Srinivasacharya says that the 6 Goswamis would wander throughout Vrindavan, constantly saying, I don't have Krishna. Where's Krishna? Where's Radha? Because they're opening up themselves to the idea of obtaining, versus saying, I have something, and then shutting out the opportunity.
I'm the most fallen, and therefore my claim is first.
Yeah.
But he's not the most fallen.
No. Anything else? You ready for Prasad Siddhari?
No, that's the question.
A question.
Okay, we'll have one last question.
This is like a little more side question, but you were saying that when you offer obeisances to deities, you should offer prayers. What prayers do you offer?
Like you maybe, well, it's different. You can't say, for example, your guru's prana or you're paying obeisances.
You don't say good pranam.
Yeah, also you can pay, say, prayers specifically to that deity. Like, say, if you're paying obeisances to Radha Kunj Bihar, you can say, Divya Vrindarana Kalpadrumada, right, this. But the thing is not just to ramble something off like blah, 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 blah. It's, even if you say it, saying it slowly, attentively.
Loud and after devotions.
Yeah. So you can think about what you're saying. Like when you pay your obeisances to Prabhupada, sit there and think, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya. I'm paying my obeisances to him who's at the feet of Vishnu. Krishna Prishtaya, who's dear to Krishna, Bhutale, throughout this world. Who Srimate Bhaktivedanta. I mean, God, those 2 words alone, you may not get up paying obeisances if you start thinking about what it's Srimate and Bhaktivedanta, what the 2 of them meant. So, That's the problem. You get to the point where is the older you get in devotional service, the more contemplative you're going to get. And you're going to sometimes seemingly do less service. Because sometimes it's like, man, I've been sitting here thinking, for a half hour about this word, Bhakti Vedanta. That's how it goes. We don't beat yourself up when you get older in devotional service and you can't do as much as you used to do. Correct? And why not? Because the body automatically, that's its natural function, it slows down. So in the end of your time, you can spend more time contemplating. So you've had this whole life to practice devotional service and faith. But Krishna is naturally going to start shutting down the body because he wants you to think more now. Like, the action, there's not much we can do. Now you're getting at the end, and now it's time to go more inside. Because the way out is going to be the way in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys have fulfilled Jusha's desire. He wanted to have nice increase in Bhagavatam attendance. And look at this. Yeah. Now, can this increase? Yeah, we can have bigger and bigger Saturday morning classes. So let's not give up the idea that we can change the world. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Prabhupada ki.
Jambavan Prabhu ki.
Now it's time to destroy that persona. Yeah. Leave no big